Good afternoon. Happy holidays, everybody. It is December, and it's good. It's good to be with you all this afternoon. I'm going to call to order the Nashville MTA board meeting, and first on the agenda is a roll call. Janet Miller, our vice chair. Present. Jessica Dalpin.
Present.
Catherine Hayes Sasser.
Present.
Ron Thompson.
Present.
And Gail Carr-Williams is present. And next on our agenda is the approval of the November 21st MTA board minutes. If I could have a motion for approval.
So moved. Janet Miller. Second.
I have a motion and a second. And any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have minutes. Next, we have our public comment section, and I do have one request for public comment. Darius Knight, Mr. Knight.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
First comment to operations, thank you for getting the system updated in English and Spanish to let the customers know where their stops are and reminding them to use the website and the transit app. So thank you for that. This has just not been a good year in terms of safety. I've talked to quite a few of your operators, and I still have family member at this agency. I don't really know what else there is for us to do. The police department seems to be doing everything that they can in terms of making sure that people are safe at Central. I do feel that there are some more steps that security itself can take by being on both levels instead of just one. I will say that the news media outlets are coming down to Central, and I emailed staff this in the last 2 weeks to inform them. They're coming down there in unmarked vehicles. So they're recording off of a cell phone just so that they have proof and evidence to see that when these incidents occur, that when y'all give a public statement, they have video that doesn't match what y'all are saying. So if y'all can, please do all you can to correct that issue. I have some friends that I went to middle school and high school with that are now driving the bus. And I've had to convince them over the last 2 weeks not to quit. We're also having an issue where multiple operators are calling out, and this has been going on for the last several months, where it's creating service outages that operations is not anticipating in the morning runs, and the customers are complaining about that. So with Choose How You Move passing, I just want y'all to be diligent in how y'all are kind of communicating with operators. And the one last thing I would say to maybe help with that is, can y'all please send positive messages for each shift when your operators are starting? Maybe that will help, but thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. I do not have any further requests for public comments. Is there anyone else wishing to make a public comment? Anyone else wishing to make a public comment? Seeing none, hearing none, I will close the public comment section of our agenda for today. We have next on our agenda information-only items. We have 3 items on the information-only items. I would ask the board members if any of them would like us to pull out any of those items for discussion.
I don't have anything to pull out for discussion per se, but can I make a comment?
Sure.
Great. Again, Amanda, I just want to commend you on the overview of the financials are so cool to look at now. I just find myself kind of wanting to look at them and flip back and forth in comparison. I love seeing that we're coming in a little bit over budget for expected revenues and a little bit under budget on expenses. That also looks good from this perspective. So thanks for that. I know Andy, I don't see him here, but I appreciate his operations statistics. I know that kind of to what Darius just said, we are seeing a little bit of a slowdown in terms of service, but I have full confidence that we'll get that rectified. But the thing I really wanted to talk about was how excited I am and how proud I am that WeGo is already opening up RFPs related to the Choose How You Move Transportation Improvement Program. in this packet. So if you haven't looked, I encourage everyone to go to page 19 and look at all of our upcoming procurement projects lists. I think it's awesome that we had these ready to go so quickly after the November election. So I'm just thrilled to bring that to light for everyone.
Thank you very much. Anyone else have any comments on our information-only items? Hearing none, I will move on to the next agenda item, which is the consent agenda item. And there is one item on the consent agenda, which is the adoption of free fare services for New Year's Eve. Does anyone wish to have that taken out of consent agenda item? If not, I will call for a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
There is a motion, and then there is a second. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Free fares for New Year's Eve. Hope everyone stays safe. Ms. Doppin, I'll turn it over to you for the Operations and Finance Committee.
Wonderful. We have an exciting and festive Operations and Finance Committee ahead for you all today, because nothing says the holiday season like an audit report. That is first up, our fiscal year 2024 annual audit report by Amanda Vandergrift, and I think Erica will be here for some questions if we have them. So it's all on you now, Amanda.
She does have festive earrings on, so she's bringing the spirit.
Thank you.
And you, the purple.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. So in front of you, you have two booklets. One is the required communications. It's the one with the picture on the front. That's the one that we will go through first. And then after we go through that, we'll go through the high-level variances on the financial statements. So professional standards require that we do communicate with the board about our audit process, and this booklet serves as that formal communication. If you flip to page 1, it's a letter from our firm to you first, thanking you for the opportunity to serve as your external auditors and your business advisors. And secondly, to say that a direct line of communication between this board and our firm is a very important part of this audit process. And lastly, to take this opportunity to say thank you to Steve and to Amanda and Shelley and the team. We really appreciate all of their help and support during the audit. They were ready for us, which makes for a very smooth and efficient process. At the top of page 2, this is the report on the results of the June 30, 2024 audit. We did issue an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion or the best opinion that you can receive. We're happy to report that we will meet all federal, state, and local deadlines. Our responsibility under generally accepted auditing standards and uniform guidance is to plan and perform our audit to obtain reasonable rather than absolute assurance about whether the financial statements are free of material misstatement and that they are presented fairly in accordance with U.S. generally accepted accounting principles. In addition, we also audited in accordance with the OMB uniform guidance. We did look at the compliance requirements described in the compliance supplement, and we will go through that as well. At the top of page 3, the significant accounting policies are included in Note A to the financial statements. We do look at those each year to make sure that they are reasonable and comprehensive, and they are. There's only one change in your significant accounting policies for this year. As you know, several years ago, we did implement the new lease standard, GASB 87. This year, with the signing of the Metropolis lease, you are the lessor of that lease, so we had to implement the lessor side of that accounting standard this year. So you'll see some new additional language related to that implementation. Management judgments and accounting estimates. The most sensitive estimates that affect the financial statements have been listed here for you for your information. We do look at these to determine that the estimates are reasonable in relation to the financial statements taken as a whole. At the top of page 4, there were no alternative accounting treatments. Audit adjustments. For the audit adjustments, we have included those for your reference in Appendix B. All the adjustments were recorded in the financial statements and accepted by management. Also, each year we ask for management to sign a management representation letter that basically says that management, all the information that they gave to us throughout the audit is complete and accurate, and you'll see that that is signed by management in Appendix A. Other material written communication, we did not issue a separate management letter for fiscal year 24. There were 2 items that we noted as findings in our single audit work. And since they were both reported in the report itself, we did not issue a separate letter. So we'll go through that when we go over the financials. Top of page 5, we had no disagreements with management. Consultations with other independent accountants. Sometimes management might want to talk to other auditors or other accountants about a specific accounting or auditing matter. Although that's rare, professional standards require that if that happens, the consulting firm talk with us so that they have all the relevant facts. And to our knowledge, there were no such consultations during fiscal year 24. Other than the signing of our engagement letter, there were no issues discussed prior to our retention as independent auditors. We had no difficulties encountered in performing the audit. There were no fraudulent or illegal acts noted during the audit process, nor were any identified or disclosed to us by management or the board. Bottom of page 5, MTA's audited financial statements will be included in Metro Nashville Davidson County's ACFR for fiscal year 24. So other than the inclusion of that information as a component unit to Metro, we're not aware of any other documents that will contain MTA's financial statements. At the top of page 6, these are your areas of audit emphasis, and this is where we spent the bulk of our time during the audit process. Each year, we do want to confirm to you that we are independent with respect to MTA. And then on pages 6 and 7, as you know, the accounting standards boards are issuing standards like crazy. So these are some of the upcoming standards. We will work with management as they become effective to make sure that they're properly implemented in your financial statements. Then pages 8 through 17, again, this is the signed management representation letter that we discussed moments ago. Those are the required communications. Are there any questions? Wonderful. Okay, we'll switch to the other book, the financial statements. If you flip over to pages 3 through 6, this is our independent auditor's report. And again, it is an unmodified or a clean opinion. Moving over to page 7. Pages 7 through 20 are management's discussion and analysis, and this is an opportunity for management to take a moment to talk about the financial highlights from fiscal year 24 compared to those of fiscal year 23, and we will go through some of those as we go through the statements. If you flip over to page 21, this begins your basic financial statements, and I will just point out a few of the significant changes from fiscal year 24 to 23. Your receivables from federal, state, and local governments, you can see that that's down significantly from the prior year, and that's mainly due to the timing of receipts at year end. I want to point out 3 items here: accrued interest receivable, lease receivable, and other assets long-term lease receivable. These are 3 new line items on your financial statements, and again, this is the implementation of the lessor side of the GASB 87 lease standard. Capital assets and right-of-use assets net of accumulated depreciation and amortization. You can see that that's up significantly from the prior year. You had $40.3 million of additions in capital assets during fiscal year 24, and that was offset by $23.1 million of depreciation expense for the year. At the bottom of the page, your pensions and other post-employment benefits. These are estimates, and they are based on the work of an actuary. We do look at the assumptions that they used in determining those estimates and did determine that those are reasonable in relation to the financials. Moving on to page 22, these are your liabilities and net position. Your notes payable, you can see that's down significantly from the prior year, and that's just due to less draws close to year end. Again, you can see your net pension liability and net other post-employment benefit obligations. Those numbers are prepared based on the actuary valuation. Then for your net position, we will go through those changes on page 23. At the top of page 23, operating revenues, the most significant change from the prior year is passenger fares, which was expected due to the successful launch of the quick ticket program. That was to make sure that no user was paying more than $4 a day or $65 per month. For your operating expenses, you can see that the most significant change here relates to your labor and fringe benefits, and that's up mainly due to the ongoing labor shortages, which resulted in wage increases, overtime wages, and increased training for new operators. For your non-operating revenues, the most significant change here are your local revenues, and that's mainly due to the increase in the Metro subsidy from fiscal year 23 to 24. Capital contributions, you can see that that's also a significant increase over the prior year. And the reason for that increase is just an increase in the eligible capital grant expenditures that were utilized in 23 over 24. So overall, MTA saw an increase in net position of $14.3 million. I'm just going to hit a few highlights in the back of the report. Pages 28 through 34 are the summary of significant accounting policies. And again, the only change there is the new wording for your Metropolis lease. Then we'll move over to page 36. Page 36 through 40 are your details of your classifications of capital assets and the changes within those classifications throughout the year. If you turn to page 43, at the bottom of 43 and the top of page 44, this is your new footnote related to the implementation of the lessor accounting for the new lease. Pages 49 through 62 are the details of your pension and OPEB obligations. Again, all the information within those footnotes was obtained through the use of the actuary valuations, and we did look at those estimates to make sure that they were reasonable. Also, pages 69 through 78 are required supplementary information that is again related to pension and OPEB requirements. Moving on to page 86, this is your schedule of expenditures of federal awards and state financial assistance. For fiscal year 24, your federal award expenditures totaled $46.7 million. And of that, $46 million related to the federal transit cluster. And the federal transit cluster is the major program that we tested for fiscal year 24. Excuse me. Moving on to pages 89 and 90. This is our independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters based on an audit of financial statements performed in accordance with government auditing standards. And at the top of page 90, you can see that the results of our tests disclose no instances of non-compliance or other matters that are required to be reported under government auditing standards. The next report on pages 91 and 92 are our independent auditor's report on compliance for each major program and on internal control over compliance required by the uniform guidance. So if you flip over to page 93 at the top, the results of our auditing procedures did disclose instances of non-compliance which were required to be reported in accordance with the uniform guidance. And those are in the schedule of findings and question costs as items 2024-001 and 2024-002. So if you flip to page 95, we will go through those. So during our testing of the major program for the federal transit cluster, we do look at internal controls and controls over compliance related to your major program. And in that testing, we had two separate findings. The first was related to one expenditure out of 40. It was for a check that was payable to a vendor. It was allowable under the grant. However, per review of the check copy, it only contained one signature. And per MTA's internal control policies, any amount that's dispersed over $10,000 is required to have two signatures. So the amount paid to the vendor was $199,321, and it only had the one signature. So our recommendation is that MTA consistently adhere to their internal control policies, and we recommend that MTA ensure that there are two authorized signatures for all cash disbursements greater than $10,000. In just a minute, we will look at the corrective action plan, and you'll have management's response to that finding. The second finding was related to procurement, suspension, and debarment. On page 97, you can see that for the test work that we performed on 40 vendors, we noted that 2 out of the 40 were not listed in SAM, and they also did not have a certification saying that they were not suspended or debarred. So the total cost for those are $61,170. So the reason that's a finding is because that was not checked and there was not a certificate saying that they weren't suspended or debarred, they could have made a payment to a vendor that was suspended or debarred. And according to the uniform guidance, an entity is not allowed to use federal funds to pay vendors that are suspended or debarred. So our recommendation is that MTA ensure compliance with this regulation as it relates to programs for all vendors. There are 3 ways that they can do that to ensure that they are listed on SAM. They can include a requirement that a signed suspension and debarment certification is in the file for each vendor, or they can add a clause or a condition to every contract that talks about suspension and debarment and have those vendors sign that they are not suspended or debarred. Page 98 relates to prior year audit findings. In the prior year, we did have one finding related to cash management, and that was corrected during fiscal year 24. And finally, on page 99, this is management's corrective action plan. For the first finding, management is committed to following the internal control policy and has added 2 additional reviews of all checks issued for greater than the specified threshold to ensure that each check includes the 2 authorized signers. And for the second item, management is also committed to maintaining compliance with this federal regulation. And they are going to, all new contracts will be required to complete certification via one of the 2 following methods, either registering on SAM or signing and submitting a debarment and suspension certification. Management also noted that they will have an annual update process to ensure that this is accurate and on file for all vendors. Are there any questions about the financials?
I had a couple of questions on the, so the 2, the corrective action plans. I understand that the failure to have 2 signatures on the check was a violation of an internal policy. The failure to have the appropriate checks done is a federal, it's a requirement of the grant. Do we have any like self-disclosure obligations to the government as a result of our failure?
Well, they always get our single audit reports. Now, the certification was not filed, the vendor wasn't debarred.
Okay.
So it's not as though we were doing business with a debarred vendor. We just didn't have the proper paperwork.
Okay. And so providing the audit satisfies any?
Yeah, they're made aware. And to be honest, it's not that uncommon an item with their grantees. It's just something that needs to be cleaned up in internal control.
Okay.
But had the vendor been disbarred, we
That would've
found
been a
out
big
later,
problem.
what
That
would
would've been a
be,
bigger problem.
what would be the penalty for us for that?
So if that would have happened, you would have had a question cost. So it didn't result in a question cost because
A question
weren't-
cost, meaning you would have questioned whether or not we should have made that
According to the
disbursement.
uniform guidance,
Okay.
you're not allowed to use federal funds to pay a vendor that's been suspended
Okay.
or debarred. So
Gotcha.
it would have been
So
a
if we
finding.
did, will we get a penalty or what happens to?
It's just a finding in your report, and as Steve mentioned, what we do every year is we file a data collection form with the OIG through the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. So it's reported as a finding in there as well, and we upload the report. And any audit that's submitted to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse is subject to a desk review by the OIG, which MTA was selected in fiscal year 23 for that. So it's a possibility.
Thank you.
I would just say there are no two better words than clean audit in the financial world, so that is great news. And this is an incredibly complex organization, and when you're layering funds, and so to me, this is really positive, and we find errors and we fix them. So I would just say hats off to the staff for being so responsive, and clean audit is good audit. So.
Agreed.
Yes, agreed. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And that's why we have audits, is so we find things like that we can correct, yes. So thank you, Erica. Thank you, Amanda. As Steve mentioned at one point, that this was the last ed audit. Yes.
Yeah, from here on out, it's Amanda's problem.
This was the last time she could have pawned it off on him. So thank you for that. I think having a good, clean audit, for the most part, is a festive occasion. And moving on to another festive occasion, in theory, is the ongoing saga of the Nestor facilities and the backflow contract.
If you could just, hold on one second. Margaret, we need a motion for approval of the audit, don't we? We need
Oh, we
a
have to
motion for
approve it.
Yes.
I'm sorry, not so fast, Patrick. I'm on go today. So it is with pleasure that the Operations and Finance Committee recommended the board to approve the audit.
And that is a motion, correct?
That is a motion, yes.
And that there is a motion for approval of the audit. If I can have a second?
Second.
There's a second. Thank you very much, Ms. Miller. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I will call for the vote. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Well, you have your audit, and thank you again. And to Ed, wherever he's vacationing, good job. You all let him know. And glad you had the opportunity to work with him over all these years. Yeah. But you're in for a great treat with Amanda, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much.
All right,
Back to you.
back to
Sorry.
Operations Finance and the ongoing saga of the Nestor facilities, and the backflow contract extension.
Well,
Yeah, right.
or sinkhole.
Well, good afternoon, board.
Backflows, I know.
I'm here to discuss and present the Nestor backflow extension contract that is required due to unforeseen circumstances that impacted the project scope and budget. Last December, right about this time, you all awarded Course and Fire Security the contract to prepare those plumbing and fire systems. And initially, we did finish the project per the stamp drawings and within budget. But during the final inspection by Metro, identified additional unforeseen subsurface upgrades and updated regulations that needed to be resolved before final approval of the backflow itself. And so the new regulation really required us to lower the backflow 6 inches for their own personal inspectors, which resulted in us having to bring a crane back out, disassemble the container, disassemble the backflow, order new parts, and rebuild the backflow back up to comply with those regulations, which that request put us out an additional month for construction and added onto that another month just for reinspection. So with that said, it led to change orders totaling $47,285, which exceeded the approved contract budget by 10%. And the cost overrun did ensure the completion of the successful backflow preventer installation. Now, most importantly, with that installation, we did accomplish our goals there at Nestor, which was, having a safe operating area around the fuel lane for our staff to completely drive and park vehicles, and also have a robust asset that's preventing Nashville's potable water. protecting it, rather. Now, some of the mitigation efforts that we put into place to prevent mechanical cost overflow include robust PM, preventive maintenance program, right? Another is networking with Metro's maintenance and reliability team, as we were unaware of their updated changes, and also adding another mechanical engineering service to our maintenance and construction contract. So with that said, the staff requests the board to provide the chief executive officer the authority to approve the contract price extension. And here's a correction of $35,000 for a total project budget of $394,462.50 for the Nestor backflow project. And funding for this project is provided in the agency capital plan under the Facility Safe Good Repair Program, utilizing federal 5307 funds and matching state and local funds.
Patrick, I have a different number in the board book.
There is a different number. It got printed before the last change.
Could you give the number again that you want them to approve?
So the contract extension is for $35,000 even, and the total project budget is $394,462.50.
Thank you. Any questions for Patrick?
I don't know if this is a Patrick question or a Steve question. So the work has been done and completed, and so how does that work? That the work's already been done and now we're approving the
it's a retroactive
extra cost.
Retroactive change order. Have they completed all their inspections, Patrick?
Yes, inspections are complete.
Okay, and everything's signed,
done.
Yeah.
And work is completed. We withheld payments just as a mitigation risk effort. Once you get to the final stage of the backflow and they've done their job, we really want to keep the contractor, on the job so we can make those adjustments and keep them in line. And also our engineering staff, hold their feet to the fire and we work with Metro and get that job accomplished. So work was moved forward, and we wanted to get that final inspection before we presented the overrun.
Yeah, and it sounds like that, like getting the work done was the absolute right thing to do. I guess I'm trying to understand from a process standpoint in situations where we need to continue the work and we know it's going to exceed what we've already approved. How does that, what are the checks and balances on that?
I would say it's a very unusual circumstance, and to Patrick's point, when you're dealing with an inspection, we considered the risk to be really low because the original design documents had been approved by the permitting agencies ahead of time. So as he mentioned, this was a subsequent event. So I think it kind of falls into the category of, for lack of a better word, emergency procurement. Because to his point, if we say, okay, we're going to shut everything down, send everybody home, then get the approvals, it might be 3, 4, 5 months before we get folks back on job.
Correct, Steve. And also it's our fire system backflow, and we needed to operating for any emergency situation that happens in the building.
Yeah, and again, it's not.
The short answer, Catherine, is you can blame me.
No. And I'm not quibbling at all with the decisions. I'm sort of thinking through, it seems like the right decision was made, and is there a process built in place so that if a similar emergency expenditure is required, that is, we don't somehow get crosswise with our processes for approving?
Some of these can fall into, we've had a couple instances in the last few years we've followed our emergency procurement procedures. What we tend to try to do is when you approve the contracts initially, there's sort of built-in contingency. And this one, it would have been sufficient, but again, and Jessica touched on it in her opening introduction, that the gift that keeps on giving, that is Nestor. That building, that facility defines unforeseen site conditions. So they ran into a couple things in advance going along. Probably in the future, it was a relatively quick project. If you're doing a longer term project, you're able to kind of assess, as you go along, where do we stand on, maybe we need to jack up contingency a little bit more, or maybe we're in a good enough position where we can reduce contingency and allocate to other projects. But this one being, and the monetary amount being relatively low, the risk level was pretty small. And again, the assessment was the risk of not having a permitted operable, fire control system relative to $35,000. I'll put it to you this way, since Eric is here, if it's a finding next year, I'll eat that.
I think the point, sorry, go.
Oh, no, go ahead, you go first.
I think the point, and Catherine totally get it, is that from a governance standpoint, I think the board prefers to approve contracts before the money's spent, right? And we know there will be occasional things like this, but I think that for the record, that's where the question lies, right?
I think that I was going to say the same thing, and maybe you're asking, or maybe you think that we should maybe think about a process and a policy for when this should happen again. When does it trigger board approval without maybe us having a meeting and let somebody go forward? But maybe that's something that finance department can sort of think about. How do we do this in the future? Because I think that's more your question than a process
absolutely.
question.
I'm not at all. I think everything was done the right way in this instance. I think it gives us a point of reference to say, all right, there will be times when this has to happen, and how do we make sure we don't run afoul of any accounting or board fiduciary duties, but still empower you guys to do what you need to do in those exact types of circumstances. So again, I'm not at all disputing anything about what it was done. It just seems to sort of highlight
another way to look at control on the contracts. The other thing Patrick alluded to was even with this change, the project was within what was allocated to it in the capital plan and in the funding agreement. So it was really more a matter of the actual construction contract as opposed to, now where do we find the money, sort of a thing.
Great discussion. Sounds like a good table talk for finance.
Sure. And anyone who'd like to come out and visit the backflow preventer and watch it in action, Patrick will be happy to host you.
Absolutely.
Patrick, my wish for you for 2025 is that you don't have to come back to us and use the word backflow.
That's right. Really good one.
Yes.
We can't promise anything about the word subsidence or sinkhole, though.
I got a question. Where did the 50 cents come from? Who's had 50? Anyway, that was not a real question.
I don't agree with it either. The change bothers me.
No, it's okay. My question is, when we voted, I guess a month or two ago, about approval that the board, not the CEO or the procurement or whatever, where does that fall in line with what we're doing here with this approval or voting on this? Correct, yeah.
Well, the original amount would have been above the expenditure limit. So, and I don't know our procurement or our construction guidance well enough to know what that change order, because sometimes there's an application of a change order percentage in similar fashion. But I think the way we apply ours is pretty much once it's above that board threshold, really any change order that drives it above that amount. So even if, theoretically, if you had approved the contract at $299,720 and it came in at $299,720 and 50 cents, in theory, we still would have had to come back to get that extra 50 cents.
And
that might be, to Catherine's point, that might be another piece of what we look at in our procedures.
Yeah.
So that concludes the presentation. But I mean, to Steve's point earlier, we completed the escalator project where we didn't even have to touch the contingency. That was $150,000 to $200,000. So Nestor is its own little joy.
The gift that keeps on giving. Thank
Right.
you, Steve.
Generally, anything underground is, I just always am thankful when projects are done underground.
And hope they stay done. Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate that. Riveting update and report on the Nestor Backflow Project contract extension. I think we had good conversation. I agree with Catherine in terms of just kind of looking at the policy and process and what triggers the emergency kind of extension and that sort of thing and how that works.
The only other thing I would add kind of, and it goes back to the discussion during the audit, was this, to the extent it was, quote, a violation or exception, it was an exception to our policies, not a federal, not a federal or state or a regulatory policy.
But if we write a new policy, then it won't be an exception. So thank you, Amanda, for the eye contact. It is the pleasure of the Operations and Finance Committee to make a motion to the board to accept the staff recommendation as stated, not as written. Can I say that, Margaret? Yes, I have. Okay, so as Margaret has written down, the contract extension at $35,000 and the total project budget, $394,462.50. Thank you.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
There is a second. Is there any further discussion? We did have really good discussion on this, so great, good governance. I have a motion and a second and no further discussion. I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It carries. Back blow. In motion.
I feel like that deserved a round of applause. I just wanted to do that. Thank you so much. It is now my pleasure to hand it back over to you, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Doffin. That was a very good committee meeting. And we have no agenda items for the NICE committee, the new initiatives and community engagement. Mr. Thompson, however, is there anything you need from this board for your committee?
I have none at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Bland, CEO report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, members. Just a few things to report. Since the voters spoke up on November 5th for better mobility in Davidson County, a lot of us have been working with Mayor O'Connell's office and Metro Planning to implement the program of improvements contained in Choose How You Move. Ms. Dauphin referred to a couple of upcoming procurements we have going out that will start to advance the program. A little bit of uncertainty in the timing of the program as a lawsuit was filed by the opponents of the measure. It's in the Chancery Court now. It's scheduled to go to trial January 8th and 9th, so hopefully there'll be an expedited decision. If all goes smoothly, they are scheduled to start collection of the half-cent sales tax February 1st, and then there will be, some certainty to the timing. It does tie things up a bit as Metro's not able to issue any sort of commercial paper or other debt against it until all of the litigation is resolved. We did get one bit of certainty, though, this week with respect to our capital plan. This past Tuesday, the Metropolitan Council adopted Mayor O'Connell's proposed capital spending plan for the year, and that plan calls for an investment of over $527 million for various capital projects throughout the metropolitan government, and in that amount includes $20.1 million for MTA for three specific areas, our typical grant matching funds, our local match to our state and federal grants, funding for our routine transit bus replacement, funding for our routine access paratransit vehicle replacement. We have a number of other pending capital projects that will fall into the Choose How You Move bucket of funds. Ms. Dauphin referred to, we have an RFI going out, request for information to the consulting community about the Murfreesboro Pike Corridor, so that will officially kick off our planning process for the Murfreesboro Pike All-Access Corridor. The intent of the RFI is to collect as much information from people who are used to doing this all over the country, really all over the world, so that in a next phase we can ask specifically for them to propose. So it's a good opportunity, particularly as we're wanting to expand the purpose of this project beyond sort of a typical transportation corridor to look at things like business retention and community benefits and housing retention and those types of activities. I know that Ron and I have talked about considerably, so that'll be kind of an important piece of this. And there's been a tremendous amount of interest in this particular project, both locally but around the country with a lot of those firms. We also got some great news this week relative to the Murfreesboro Pike Corridor. I don't think Dan's here today, but I want to thank and congratulate Dan Freudberg, our Deputy Chief Operating Officer for Systems. We learned this week that we were one of 34 projects selected nationally, only one of 2 in Tennessee by the United States Department of Transportation to receive a Phase 1 SMART grant. All good federal programs have an acronym that stands for something. And in this case, SMART stands for Strengthening Mobility and Revolutionizing Transportation. So those are pretty lofty words. The grant's for just under $2 million, and it's going to enhance, help us enhance service reliability in the Murfreesboro Pike corridor. I would be lying if I understood most of the words in the grant application. It is super technical. I will read what I have written down here. It will support a project to enhance service reliability in the Murfreesboro Pike corridor using computer-aided dispatch and automated vehicle location systems, headway conditional transit signal priority, traffic adaptive signals, machine vision, and artificial intelligence and machine learning. The overall goal of the project, yeah, I know, isn't that a mouthful? It sounds very smart. That's why, fortunately, my only involvement in the project will be signing stuff, I think. Smarter minds than mine are working on it. But essentially, the overall goal, when we look at frequent network corridors like Murfreesboro Pike, where service runs very often, like at that 10-minute, we're running about every 10 minutes in the Murfreesboro Pike corridor. And when you have the type of situations we do out there, we have variable passenger loads, intermittent traffic conditions, all sorts of disruptions in traffic flow, ranging from accidents in the corridor, weather, what have you. It's very easy for buses to bunch. So, maybe a bus comes by and then the next bus comes by 3 minutes later, and also to gap. The bus comes by and then it's 20 minutes till the next bus comes by. So the goal of all of this is to, and really when you get to that level of frequency, it isn't nearly as important that the bus came on time as it is that the bus came about the same amount of time in between the one before it and the one after it. So the goal of all of this is to use adaptive signal technology, dispatch tools, notifications to our operators to try to keep that spacing consistent. We're partnering with Vanderbilt University and Penn State University on this. There have been some really good collaborations that we've done with both of those institutions. Obviously, we're collaborating with NDOT as they manage and own the traffic signal system, and several of the private vendors that we've been used to working with in this space. So stay tuned for really interesting stuff in that, along the lines of that project, which obviously we hope, as it's successful, we'll be able to expand it to other corridors where we're running frequent service. We're also working, a few months ago, we were notified of another competitive grant from USDOT, and Billy Higgins, I don't think Billy's here today either, but she's taking lead right now. I think it'll probably be handed off to Amanda and crew for a grant under the Build America Bureau of USDOT. It's an innovative finance grant, and it's really looking at how we might best be able to deploy real estate assets as we build out transit center projects, park and ride projects, to leverage those assets into joint development and transit-oriented development. So having good success with, and as Billy said, in the waning days of this administration at USDOT, they are pumping out grants and they're pumping out regulations. So we'll see how that goes. Several of us traveled to Cincinnati this past month to speak at the Transit Ballot Initiative Conference of the American Public Transportation Association. It's a biennial conference. I know we've attended it in the past in preparation for a ballot measure. And I would say, first of all, thank you to Jessica, who attended and spoke on a panel. Amanda was on a panel. I was on a panel. Jeff Morris from the campaign was on a panel. Michael Briggs was on a panel. Safe to say Nashville was the belle of the ball, and people all over the country were asking, how the heck did you guys do that? So it was a good opportunity. As I said to Michael when we asked him to come with us, is you need to take a victory lap for everything you did. And now the hard work begins. But people were very impressed with the story, and I think the variety of viewpoints from Jeff on the campaign side to Jessica on the advocacy side to Amanda on a lot of the nuts and bolts, was really effective. We've had meetings this month with NDOT, Metro Planning, on our consultants from Kimley Horn and Nelson Nygaard on the update to the N-Motion Strategic Service Plan. That one's sort of been sneaking by, as we've been embedded in the referendum activities. But that'll be an important activity going forward. And Felix and his group have been heavily involved in that. So a lot of the work that's going on now is data collection and review of prior studies, updating condition assessments. So over the course of 2025, I'm sure the board can expect to hear reports from our consultants and our planning team, on several occasions. I would like to announce the addition of really cool people to our staff, and we have another one. Madeline, can you stand up, be recognized? Madeline Robertson just joined our staff as our transit planning analyst. She's new to our organization, but not really, because she worked, previous to being with us, she worked with the Network for Sustainable Solutions here in Nashville, and you may recall that group was super helpful in getting WeGoLink off the ground, and getting that sort of into the public consciousness. She also worked with the Nashville Moves campaign, so it just seems pretty natural that, after doing all of that stuff leading up to it, now she can help actually deliver the goods. So, Madeline, it's a pleasure to have you, and this is the board. I think you can probably expect to hear reports from her over the course of the next few years. Finally, I will call out, I'm glad a few folks are here that I want to call attention to. Although, you're all probably getting tired of me calling Kia's name with response to recognition. The applause keep coming in for the Dr. Ernest Rip Patton Jr. North Nashville Transit Center. We just learned this past week that it has been selected for recognition by the American Society of Highway Engineers Middle Tennessee section as their project of the year for 2024. So congratulations to Kia, Lydia, the design team, Patrick, everybody who had a hand in that facility. So keep the awards coming, Kia. I'll keep mentioning your name if you keep winning more awards. Just one item to report on the RTA side. We're continuing to plug along on the Donaldson Station project and the joint development agreements. We're just sort of in a little bit of a holding pattern, waiting for our federal environmental review, which we should be seeing first quarter next year. Once that occurs, we'll move sort of hardcore into design and property acquisition and other activities, really to work on building out the infrastructure, while in parallel, we work on the joint development agreements with the development team of HG Hill and Southeast Venture. But I'm very appreciative. Debbie's out this week on a well-deserved vacation, but she's really kind of taken over that project and has a lot of background and expertise. So very optimistic about that. And then the last thing I'll say is I hope you all have a safe and happy and joyous holiday season with your families.
Thank you, Steve. That was a great report. Anyone have any questions for Steve? Well, first, I'm just going to echo everything you said. I mean, it was great. We got a lot of progress going on. We've had, I think we've had an incredible year, although it's not year-end fiscal, it is year-in. And I'm really proud of everyone. I think we had a lot of bumps along the way, but I think we managed those bumps very courageously and effectively. And we've been able to welcome in so many new colleagues, and all of our new colleagues have just hit the ground running, and you just feel the effect of their expertise and their excellence. So well done, Steve, on building up all of the staff and in such a great way. And Madeline, welcome. It's good to see you since you're our newbie. We had newbies last month, and we got any coming in January, so we'll be prepared. Never know. Well, welcome. It's good to have you here. And as always, nice to give some tribute to Ed for all the years that he gave. And we certainly have just really excellent financials, and those financials lead us to everything else that we do. So Ed, wherever you are vacationing and chilling, thank you very much. And Shelley, you've been right there with them. And you continue to be here with Amanda, and having your presence in the room is always a comfort and a joy. And I know how hard you work. And so thank you for all you do to make certain that all of this works now, worked in the past. And you're a major reason why these audits come out the way they do. So I just want to thank you very much and congratulate you. Steve, thank you for your leadership this year. Margaret, thanks for keeping us on track and helping us always to think about how we think about. And also, and providing us with great counsel and great guidance. I appreciate it very much. And my fellow board members, Janet Miller, my vice chair. Thank you for always standing in for me when I can't be here and supporting me in ways that are pretty miraculous and wonderful. Rest of my board members, thank you for all your hard work this year. A lot has gone into it, and I can't even call y'all newbies anymore. You all are just seasoned, have stepped up to the table to make certain that MTA serves Nashvillians in the way that they do. And I thank you all for your efforts and for all of your hard work. So I appreciate it very much. And Jessica, thanks for going to speak at the conference and sharing Nashville with others. So to all that and to all of you, your hard work is noticed. It's deeply appreciated. And not just by this board, but also by Nashvillians. All I do is hear MTA all the time, and it's positive. So thank you all for what you do. My TV friends over there, thank you for keeping us okay and getting the cameras just right and the mic. So we thank you very much for all of your efforts. So to that, happy holidays, happy health. And take care of each other, take care of your families, and we'll see you next year. Thank you all very much. And with that, we are adjourned. Unless anybody has a question for me. Nope. Good job.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.